Okay. Hello, John. So nice to see you again. How are you today?
Yeah, Fiona, it's likewise. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. And
Yeah.
yeah, let's looking forward to talking insomnia with you.
Yeah, same. We were discussing over Slack around kind of a few different insomnia related topics, and something that has come up for me quite a lot recently is just this idea around like emotional resilience around insomnia and insomnia recovery, specifically meaning for anybody listening, like how to deal with those really difficult emotions when you are in the depths of like not being able to sleep. And I think John, maybe you resonate with what that feels like.
Yeah, I don't not resonate with it. That's for sure. Yeah, for anyone listening, I've had it for 7 years. Fiona, you had it for how long again?
About a year, but it was still hell for a year.
Yeah, a week is more than enough to understand just how shitty it is. Yeah, emotional fatigue. The biggest source of the emotional fatigue for me was I think I didn't realize this until recently. I had so much doubt that I would really truly recover. And when I was in various support groups and hearing other people who talked about their insomnia, and they said, no, it gets better, it gets better. I never really believed them. I think after a while, I thought that any sort of insomnia related support group was they were just there to convince themselves that they would feel good after only having 3 hours of sleep a night or whatever, like they was just almost like in a delusional state. So that
Hmm.
was really hard on me to believe that I could ever really overcome from it. I guess it was like a strong sense of hopelessness.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
that was
feels very much similar to my experience. Yeah, I think like both the doubts I think are very real of like whether or not
Mhm.
you're ever going to recover is just like such a true kind of like thing. And now obviously we're both sleep coaches now, and now we know that that's also part of this like survival instinct, right? Like no, our brain is almost like tricking us into believing that recovery is not possible because it feels very much presented by with like this threat. And for me, actually, one of the things that I almost felt like helped me the most when I felt like I just couldn't stop thinking about sleep constantly, I tried to make a really strict like mental barrier with what I was going to allow sleep to dictate throughout like my day. And the reason why I actually even set this boundary was because my partner at the time said that he just didn't want to speak about sleep with me anymore. And it sounded very harsh in the moment. And I think I almost cried because I'm like, well, this is so intense for me. Like, how can you not want to talk about my sleep? And
Yeah.
actually, he was almost very right. Like, actually, like, kind of setting that boundary of like, I'm not going to talk about it. Not that you're not thinking about it about anymore, but I was slowly just not allowing it to dictate how I felt every day.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where it's going to be impossible for
Hmm.
anyone to not think about sleep during the day. I don't think I've ever heard of one person who says, I've had chronic insomnia for years, but I don't think about sleep at all. No, no, it's just going to happen. But what I like to tell clients is that the good news is that you don't have to not think about insomnia in order to recover from insomnia. The thoughts are going to be there.
Hmm.
Your mind's just going to be a mind. It's going to do its thing. Yada yada. But the important thing is, for me, what I found very helpful is to just simply acknowledge the thoughts, just like you would any other, I don't know, maybe other uncomfortable thought that you have throughout the day. Maybe if it's, we all have insecurities or things that we're not crazy about, or maybe we have a looming deadline with the work that's not really helpful to stress about it that much. But as long as you simply acknowledge it and not entertain those thoughts, meaning fully dive deep in really succumbing to what the thoughts are
Hmm.
suggesting. Like, I don't know, have you truly explored every supplement option?
Hmm.
Maybe there's that magic pill
Yeah,
could be out there.
it's
You
true.
don't know. So I think that simple act of acknowledgement, and I think that, as harsh as it sounds, your partner at the time, I think he was on the right track too, because it's the alternative is, you know what? You're right, Fiona. Let's
Hmm.
cancel all of our plans. Let's sit down. Let's set aside 3 hours right now and talk all nothing but sleep and how worried we are about whether or not sleep's going to happen tonight or the next night.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's so emotionally exhausting. Like I think sometimes I was like almost like more exhausted by the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about sleep than the lack of sleep itself, you know? And it's like, why is this continuously like just taking up so much space? Which is also like
Hmm.
why I guess John and I wanted to speak about this today because for anybody listening, we know how exhausting it is, and also like offer a little bit of perhaps hope that it does get better. You know, like we both have of course our own experiences, and for me like this boundary wasn't always maybe something that I could abide by. But to speak about like maybe other techniques that I implemented personally was really journaling. Like I think that that isn't something that always works for a lot of people, but journaling became so instrumental for my recovery. And actually, I'd still do it quite a lot now. It's just like such a really good way of taking everything that was happening up here and just writing it down on paper. And I would do this throughout the day, multiple times during the day, on like the days where I was more anxious, and also like at night, if I couldn't sleep. But yeah, what were tools actually that you would use, John? Very curious.
Yeah, I know that's interesting that you brought up the journaling, because that
Hmm.
was something that I would do rather inconsistently as well. When I was still experimenting with the CBTI years
Hmm.
ago, that was a more regular part of my daily routine. I think I did made a point to do some journaling every day. Ever since I've recovered, which is I'm coming up on the 1 year mark, I haven't
Amazing.
I haven't really journaled. I had a small speed bump recently. It wasn't that long, and it wasn't that severe, but it was still enough for to give me a little bit of doubt, understandably so. And I did do some journaling for a day or two. Wasn't long. I
Hmm.
didn't make a big deal about it. It's just like I've had this same thought about
Hmm.
5 times in the past hour or so. Let me
Hmm.
just tell my brain to shut up, write it down, and then
Hmm.
once for some reason something happens where once you write it down, you realize just how irrational of a
Yeah,
thought it is.
agree.
Besides that, I don't know how much this is going to land with a lot of people, but I was more or less really stubborn with just going about my day. As shitty as it was, I was really stubborn and headstrong, and that personality quirk of mine probably didn't help in some aspects of insomnia, because there again comes that type A curse where you're
Hmm.
where you're really a go-getter trying to fix the fucking problem of
Hmm.
insomnia. But it was really helpful in this aspect of recovery when it comes to just I was just determined to just go through my day. And usually my day went about just fine. There are times, of course, when I was uncomfortable, but there are times when uh I was so determined and interested in whatever else it is that I was actually trying to do, that I had just flat out forgotten that I was sleep deprived until like, yeah, like maybe a half hour, an hour go by, and then I would and I tell myself, oh yeah, I'm supposed to feel uncomfortable, and then shit, there it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like shit right now, don't I? But so
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know how much that with a lot. Maybe you could shed some light on this with how. I don't know. Do other clients of yours have any sort of that, like, that stubbornness? Just like, what, I feel like shit, but whatever. I'm just good at this.
Yeah, I think like I actually feel like that's actually a really good advice once you do start to recover because I feel like a lot of people tend to stop doing things because they perhaps feel tired or because
Hmm.
they shouldn't I don't know, like shouldn't be exercising if they're sleep deprived. Like how does that work? And I think to this, obviously, we both know now that insomniacs tend to underestimate how much they sleep, just as much as good sleepers overestimate how much they're sleeping.
Hmm.
So it's like oftentimes we stop doing things because of the perceptions that are happening in our mind. And I actually think that that perspective of like almost we'll do it anyway, like do it even if you're scared, or is a really good like I guess tool once you are recovering to slowly start reteaching your brain that that wakefulness isn't something to fear, right? Because it starts even in like the day-to-day habits and how you actually start to view like your day and almost like reclaiming it back from maybe what insomnia
Hmm.
is slowly starting to take from you. And I, same as you, I think if not every single insomniac that I've ever met is very, very type A, a very, very perfectionist type of person. And I also didn't really
Hmm.
want it to like let it claim like time from me, but there were definitely moments where it was quite difficult to show up as like this perfect ideal that I had of like who I had to be. Like I'm also a yoga teacher, I have a full-time job, I had a partner, I like to like work out a ton, and it felt sometimes like I did feel also a lot of physical discomfort from the lack of sleep. And I think sometimes it's like you can't always just force yourself to still do things because it's like also just uncomfortable. So I'd say it's almost like finding a balance of like, well, yeah, do things still because it's important to reteach your brain that there's nothing to fear, but at the same time, learn to be okay with the version of yourself that you are currently dealing with.
Hmm. Well, that
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up with all the things that all the activities and aspects of your identity that were crucial to you in your recovery. Because I want to bring up a how important it is to. It's weird that I think that being authentic in what you go about doing in your day is also strangely enough really important because a few months before, right before had a recovery, I was in the middle of the worst speed bump ever. It was just really, really rough and
Mhm.
lasted for a long time. And one day I convinced myself that the reason why I was in the thick of it so terribly was because I was so aggressive with solving these problems. And I wasn't totally wrong because, to our points earlier, well, this is a problem that really resonates with type A people. So but for whatever reason, I told myself, oh, that it's my personality that's the problem. So I need to be more relaxed. I need to go more with the flow. And I was talking about this with another sleep coach not too long ago, and I convinced myself that in order to overcome insomnia, I was going to uh, be a lot more laid back in every way, including diet. So I went out to the store and bought some ice cream
Nice.
to overcome my insomnia. I was good, but it really that's not really like I wouldn't normally do that because I'm really like
Hmm.
I'm a health freak. I'm very conscious about what I put in my body. But I told myself, oh no, this is how I'm going to do. I'm just going to be more laid back and really eating ice cream wasn't going to correct my sleep. I was still
Hmm.
chasing. It was still somehow like a way for me to chase a solution. Um, and I'm so glad that in hindsight that that's not a requirement to overcome insomnia because you don't have to. You shouldn't have to compromise yourself, your personality, your identity in order to get back to doing what your body's really good at, which is just sleeping. It's really good at it.
Hmm.
I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's really good
Hmm.
at being able to do that all on its own.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I love, I'm sorry, I hope my connection's okay, but I love what you said about just like going out and like getting the ice cream because it's always like it comes down to these stories that we tell ourselves, right? And when we're talking about even these like emotional difficulties that we tend to face, 99% of the times they're like self-constructed. So whether it's like a very like strict regimen with like your diet or like your exercise, those are all like self-inflicted. And I think like it's amazing that you just went out and bought an ice cream because that I think is like such an amazing like aha moment of like, well, it implies that things aren't as actually as controllable as we think that they are. And by me going out and getting an ice cream, it's more of a like, aha, you don't actually always have control over every single situation because there is no such thing as control. I think like that's also like something that I've sometimes like battled with of like, can I always control like the outcome of absolutely everything I do? And even today, like I feel quite tired and I would normally like still push myself through like a workout or I already worked out and then I was gonna go for a swim. And it's like, no, what if I don't swim? Like what if? Like it's you don't always have to control every single situation of every single waking moment. And almost like by not doing certain things, even though your brain has been so wired to do things in a certain way, it's almost like proving, well, like even if I don't do this, or even if I don't worry or X, Y, or Z, I will still be okay, you know? It's so powerful.
Yeah, this is a very careful. I think we're dancing right around a very important nuance. Just one of the many nuances that's involved with insomnia. If it's one thing to, first of all, it's awesome that that's another lesson that insomnia teaches us that it's okay to let go of control, and we can take that into the aspects of our life that do not involve
Hmm.
sleep. But I, so long as if somebody was in the middle of dealing with insomnia and they were listening to this, think we should be careful to explain to say that you shouldn't have to, if you want to be as controllable as, if you want to have every aspect of your life controlled, that's fine in regards to overcoming insomnia. It's almost irrelevant. And if you want to be go totally in the other direction, be as totally go with the flow as possible, that's also not helpful. That's also almost irrelevant to insomnia. The important thing is whether or not you're exercising these degrees of control in order to overcome insomnia. Because, you know,
Hmm.
you could be, I mean, if somebody wants to, if it's somebody's authentic desire to be as militant with their routine as much as possible to get into like Olympic level physical fitness, they want to bang out 100 push-ups, you know, every few hours, and they want to only eat salads or whatever it is, then that's great. Then if they want to do that, I think that's perfectly fine. But if they're going about taking that same attitude and applying it to, if I do this in the right order, in the right sequence, then I will overcome insomnia and get sleep.
Hmm.
That's when it becomes a problem, I think.
Agree.
Would you agree?
No, agree, because it's also just like control the things that you can control, but let go of the ones that you can't, right? So it's like also
Hmm.
same with like the whole emotional resilience. It's when you redirect your attention to the things that you can control, like enjoying your day. Like you can't control the thoughts and the discomfort, but you can maybe control like how you redirect that attention, right? So similar to, well, you can't control like your whole bedtime routine to then control your sleep, but what you can control is whether or not you choose or to enjoy the next day or not, because those are things that are within your control. So yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that shift in outlook is so important, that choosing to, you know what, I'm just going to go about my day as best as I can. It's so weird. Like, this is one of those things where it gets a little. I'm almost whenever I talk to clients about this, I find that I have to deliver that information very carefully because it almost sounds woo woo, and I think people associate woo woo with like it can be wishy washy in terms of its effectiveness. But it's strange when it comes to insomnia for whatever reason. It's really crucial
Hmm.
to have the right outlook, to have like a very healthy, rationally optimistic outlook towards the next day or the day after that. You know, it's like, you know what, maybe I am going to be uncomfortable, maybe I'm going to be sleep deprived, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. And by the way, I posted something on Instagram about this
Hmm.
recently, but just because you have we shouldn't. I think people with insomnia tend to believe that if they do get sleep, then life's going to work out perfectly. They're not going to have any more problems. Like once they get that, that's the holy grail. They've reached the state of heaven. That's peak optimal performance. It's like, uh, no, it's just one aspect of your life. You know, I mean, I've had plenty of shitty days where I had, you know, a perfect 8 hours of sleep and I was totally well rested and stuff. So, you know, it's important to remind people that, hey, you know, sleep isn't the end all be all thing. You got a lot of
Yeah.
things going on for you. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
aspects of it. Yeah,
No, I agree. I like think that this is like so insightful, and it's actually I think for me as a recovered insomniac and also now sleep coach, I think it's always such a wonderful reminder because it, like you said, it really does apply to so many other areas of life. But I think for the sake of time, maybe we slowly like wrap up. Maybe John, like you are also a sleep coach. Maybe you'd like to tell everybody where everybody can find you and how they can maybe get in touch if they'd like to work with you or find out more.
sure. Yeah, that's anyone. You just if you're interested in reaching out to me, you can just look up Insomnia to Peace. I've got my own website. You could also look me up on Instagram. Should be pretty easy to find. And yeah, I'm available for one-on-one coaching, and yeah, so looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I guess we'll speak soon.
All right, sounds good.